Welcome back. We are back with more sessions, and this session that we're going to start now is going to be about combating the forward with the plan. Now, heat rate efficiencies improvements also enable power plants to generate the same amount of electricity from less fuel and decrease the CO2 emissions. According to some estimates, India's power sector plants emit up to 120% more CO2 than average emissions per plants in the European countries. So the modernization program of power plants in the country is absolutely imperative, given that India is a signatory of the Paris Agreement. So, what are companies doing to make their plants efficient and build new plants that will be efficient and will have less CO2 emissions and will have lower heat rates? So, let's get in some real world stories. Please welcome our presenters for this session. We have Mr. Pavan Mathur, Vice President and Head, ENI TPP, Ultratech Cement Limited. We also have Mr. Nethi Srinivas, General Manager, Tata Consulting Engineers Limited, and Mr. Mukul Srivastava, Vice President Works, JK Lakshmi Cement, who will be joining us shortly. We have Mr. Pavan Mathur with us, and he is ready with his presentation. Good morning, Mr. Mathur.
Good morning. Good morning.
Please go ahead and start your presentation.
Okay. 1 second. Is my presentation visible?
Yes, sir. It's good to go. Please start.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And as the topic suggests, combating for reducing net heat rate in TPP. And my presentation is around how we are looking at this topic and what are the management commitments, what is the way we look at it, what are the things we are doing around it, and how we are trying to maintain the net heat rate to the best possible in view of changing scenario. So that's about my presentation. Okay. So we have our energy management policy for each of our plant, and we are committed towards the energy reduction, not only in cement plant, but also in the thermal power plants. So it is known to all the persons in the plant, and it is circulated, shared with down to the shop floor levels and workers even. So that's a awareness campaign we are trying to build from last few years, many years, and we have a good amount of understanding on this energy front. As an Ultratech, we are a system-driven company. So most of the management systems, it is 9,000 or environment management system 14,000 or this 50,000 even for energy conservation. We have incorporated all the systems. We have implemented all the systems at each of our plant, and that is also supporting us to drive this energy reduction. Now, this is the current power mix. This is the current power mix we have. So we have around 1100 megawatt of thermal power plant capacity. Then we have around 125 megawatt WHRS capacity now. And renewable, we have 110. And in fact, we are going ahead with all these initiatives for a green energy perspective. Right. And that is why, as earlier speakers also discussed, so this is becoming a challenge also for thermal power plants. This power mix combination as the India progresses for green energy. So this is putting pressure on the thermal power plants. And we have plans now to increase our WHRS for addition of around 127 megawatts in just next 1 or 2 years. and 190 megawatt renewable energy projects in next 1 to 2 years. So currently our green power mix share is around 15%, which is going to be 25% in next 1 to 2 years. As you might be aware that we are growing through inorganic method. So we are acquiring a lot of plants, and in the recent past, in last 5 years, we have acquired JP plants, we have acquired Binani cement plants, we have acquired Century plants, and with that we have also got thermal power plants. So through inorganic methods, we are getting our thermal power plant capacity also growing. So from 711 to now we are around 1100 megawatt, and we are putting up WHRS also. So in the last 5 years, we have grown from 59 to 125 megawatts, as I told you in the earlier sheet also. Now, as we were discussing, with this WHRS and solar power plants, we are getting challenge on the TPP gross heat rate. So in the last 5 years, if we see, the gross heat rate has actually increased in spite all our efforts. If you can see in the blue line, our PLF has gone down drastically from around 79-80% to around 71%, and while the gross rate has also increased. So this is the main point of challenge, that how we can keep it lower. Various initiatives we have taken, which I will be discussing some of them. So that is the point. And then second, auxiliary power front, we have got some success. So with the even with the reducing PLF, our auxiliary power is reducing. So that is shown in the second graph here. We have around 38 units now, and this is the last year performance. So we have 2 to 3 units in a single plant. This is a combined result of all the units, and we have energy 3018 kilocalorie per unit in the Vikram cement, and 3404. As I said, we have many older plants also acquired through various acquisitions. So we have all the technologies, in fact. So it is AFBC, CFBC, or old cyclone, or hot cyclone, cold cyclone, all kind of technologies we have. So we have all kind of challenges also. We have all kind of opportunities also. So this is the trend of heat rates we have across our plants. Majority of our plants are CFBC boilers, and in the configuration of 2 into 23 megawatt, because we have our cement plants in the range of 5,000 TPD to 10,000 TPD. So for that, the power requirement comes around this 2 into 23 in the range of PLF of 80 to 100%. So we have most of our plants, 60 to 70% are CFBC boilers in the range of 2 into 23 megawatt. Some of the best practices. We are trying to monitor each and every equipment performance and analysis why it is deviating. Then we have daily monitoring of specific energy reports, and then we have energy monitoring systems available with us. So through that also we get reports and we can analyze that. Then feasibility of any suggestions given by any employee or at the management level. Then we have world-class management system. So shop floor teams are also there. They can also give their ideas and we can implement it. And there is a cross-functional discussion that how we can reduce the net heat rate. So all kind of best practices we have tried to employ in our system. We also do benchmarking so that we are aware on what is going on into the industry with the with our own units or with the other units of the with the other units of industry. So as I said, we have online energy monitoring system at most of our plants. 80 to 90% of the plants we have this. So we are able to understand that what is the generation, what is the load pattern, what are the loads on different energy sources, what are the loads on different equipments. So balancing of the things and efficiencies we can see online. That is what we have implemented at all our plants. We have also developed special screens or mimics to understand that how our critical loads like cement plant loads, if you see in the right hand side, so how our critical loads are running, how much megawatt they are consuming, and what is the status when they are going off on. So variability, what is happening, how our boilers are operating, what is the steam flow, what are the major KPIs for complete TPP. On one screen we can see and we can take immediate decisions on that, so that we don't lose much on any part of the efficiency. We are also doing the mapping of various equipments, what is the percentage, what is the who are the major consumers in our system, whether it is BFP pumps or fans or ACC. So we are trying to find out what is our mapping of energy consumption, and we are trying to benchmark it then with the industry and trying to see what are the gaps available to fill up, and then we take actions on that to improve our efficiencies. We also have a practice to compare our plants within ourselves. So as I said, we have 38 plants. So we compare this energy mapping with other plants, that how other plants are performing, how our plant is performing, and then what they have done, what we can do. So sharing of best practices is always there, and we have a forum available also for sharing the best practices, that how one plant is reducing the energy, and can this be replicated at other plants also. Since I informed you that we have a world-class manufacturing system implemented. Earlier it was TPM and then called as world-class manufacturing system. So we are using all kind of tools also, like in this figure I can show you that some of the workflow shop floor teams, they are utilizing these tools to understand that how we can improve the efficiency, going into the details of the subject. So the problem, if there is a high auxiliary power, so means it is due to the man, machine, method, or material. So we are trying to find out, going into the details, how this where is the problem and what can be done about it. So that is another method of finding out the right issues and solving them. SWOT analysis is another tool. So we are utilizing this tool also to find out what is our strength, weakness, where are the opportunities, and what are the threats. So you can see that in the threat portion, main threat in most of our plant is the utilization part, means PLF is reducing, and then coal quantity, because coal is a major cost consumer. So we have to understand that what is the cheap coal available to you and how to utilize it optimally. So these are the things we are finding out, and these are the concepts on which our measure strategy is based. On day-to-day basis, we are trying to see what are the major load variations we are having, and we are trying to collaborate with cement plants that how this can be reduced. So if you see on the right hand side, on day-to-day basis, we are sharing that what were the load fluctuations, how many times unplanned stoppages were there on behalf of say mill stoppages, and how much time steam venting took place. So we on a minute detailed basis, we are trying to find out and then plan it one day in advance, that what will be the load next day, and how our power plant will be operated. We are also utilizing CFD. We have our own cell for CFD modeling, and some of my previous speakers were saying that we can improve our efficiencies through internal measures. So CFD, in my personal opinion, is a very good tool. We have used it in many of our projects, and the example I'm showing is that we could see that there was particle escape of 3%, and due to which our combustion efficiency was very less, and this was possible to envisage this through CFD only, and we could improve our combustion efficiency through this observation and solutions. So CFD is a very good method where we can immediately improve our efficiency to the range of 4 to 6%, 7% by visualizing this. So the solution we had through this CFD, we had like for tertiary air nozzles, our exit diameter was 96 mm. So after CFD, it was suggested that if we reduce this diameter to 85 or 80, our overall combustion efficiency can be improved from 91% to 97%, and which will improve our overall boiler efficiency from 84.47% to around 88%. So this was one example of CFD, and we had many CFDs like this, which has helped us to improve efficiencies. We have implemented advanced process controllers from a company ABB for our process control, and all the PID loop controls, whether it is SA fan or ID fan or any other fans. So all the loops of the boiler we are controlling through this advanced process controller, and this is giving us the gain of around 0.5% in the boiler efficiency overall. So whenever we are doing the on-off test, means without running in the advanced process control method and in the normal manual method, we are getting the improvement of around 0.5% in heat rate. So this is also making sure that all our operations are safe, in the sense when the limits are defined in this system, so we don't go beyond those limits, and process variation fluctuations are controlled, and they are well within limits. So this is again giving us benefits for efficiency improvement. One of the problem which many of the thermal power plants are having is vacuums, not maintaining the vacuums during summer seasons. So many of our plants, we have implemented single row system, so for condensers. So this is also given us benefit. because due to the more area available with the single row tubes, the heat conduction becomes improved, and that gives you benefit in the condenser. We are trying to see that our LOIs are also reduced. So for all our plants, we are trying to see that how we can do it so that our combustion is better and LOIs reduce. So on a day-to-day basis, or through analysis of various coal parameters, airflow or to coal ratio, or knowing that what is the GCV, and whenever there are changes in coal quality, so how to optimize our plant. So that we are doing it on the regular basis. In one of the cases, we have replaced the coal nozzles, and coal size is maintained through adjusting the crusher gap, which has given us good benefits. So this is one example that continuous monitoring of the coal size, coal quality, and adjusting our parameters or adjusting our operation can give us benefit. We are also changing our ACC fan blades. So we are looking to the lighter blades with lesser degree. So the air dynamics is better, and we get reduced power in ACC fans. So most of the plants, we are changing our fan blade with FRP. This is one of the example for boiler PFN, where we had a longer duct, so there was a pressure drop. So by changing the duct design and cutting the duct to a lower length, we have been able to reduce the pressure drop across the duct, and this has resulted in the efficiency improvement. Most of our fans, whether it is fans and pumps, we have medium voltage drive installations for BFP or ACW. So that is there. And some of the people were asking the question that it has impact on the harmonics. Yes, it has impact on the harmonics, but as rightly informed by Rangan Banerjee Saab, that if we can design it in a proper way, or we can procure it in a proper way, so there are designs available. We can choose it for 50, 56 pulse, 54 pulse, or 36 pulse, depending on the voltage levels. So it will be under control, and the regulations are given by, as we all know, that regulations are given by IEEE 519. So there are other methods also, that there are passive filters, active filters, or hybrid filters. So utilizing them, we can control our harmonics level. So utilizing MV drives or drives, LT drives, will be there to have lesser power and efficiencies in our system, but there are ways to control the harmonics also. We are also installing fanless cooling towers. Now fanless cooling towers are proven, where we can reduce the fan which is installed in the cooling tower. So around 30 kilowatt to 50 kilowatt saving, depending on the capacity of the cooling tower, we can save it. So this uses the gravity method, and we can save this, and these are now commonly available. This also has many other advantages like the algae formation, which was earlier there. It is not there into this because of the construction material used, and this is almost maintenance free type of system. So in this year we are doing it for around 5 plants. Earlier we had around three plants already done for this this kind of cooling towers. As Professor Rangan was telling, that we are also using this vapor absorption machines, so for our chillers. So in place of conventional chillers, we are using vapor absorption machines, and this gives you around 40% of power savings over the conventional methods. One of the one of the issue we are facing at many of our locations is because now the solar is there, then WRH is there, so our PLFs are reducing. Hence the pumps, especially BFP pumps, they are getting inefficient. So what to do with that? So one or two places we have done is the retrofitting of the pumps. So by changing the pump internals or blinding the stage, so we are doing these modifications to bring the pump efficiency back to its desired value. So there are many other operational improvement practices. So ESP voltage optimization, or utilization of fly ash and bad ash in cement plants. So all kind of practices we are trying to implement, which we get through other industries or other of our plants. We are also trying to see that our reliability is maintained. So we are implementing all kind of condition monitoring equipments, and we are trying to monitor the performance of all the critical equipments. We also have a systematic method of shutdown and overhauling monitoring. We have a separate module on that. So whenever we are taking the shutdowns, we are monitoring our shutdowns through those modules, and we are also seeing that how our MTBF, MTTR, all those are in the means budgeted levels only. In the condition monitoring, one or two plants we have started using ultrasonic technology for various compressed air audits or knowing the partial discharge. We also do vibration monitoring on a regular basis. We have expert available, in-house expert available. We have tools and tackles available. So that method is also there. We are also trying to go on the digitalized way of doing the vibration analysis. We are in the process of evaluating those offers from many vendors. So might be in near future we will be having the online vibration monitoring and analysis on that. Lube wall analysis we do on the regular basis. Thermography is a common practice, and then we have testing on the ST motors, transformers. So all the condition monitoring, we have system established not only in the recent past but for very long now. So in all, we are trying to fulfill all the requirements of energy management system, and trying to make our system efficient, and trying to control the net heat rate to the desired levels, in spite all the challenges being faced in the changing scenario power mix. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mathur, for your presentation. We are grateful for all the information to us. Please stay with us. We get a lot of questions from our attendees. And we will take up questions once all the presenters have done with the presentation. So please stay with us. If you wish, you can turn your camera off, but do stay with us and please listen to the presentations because it's an interesting experience. Let's now thank Mr. Niti Srinivas, General Manager, Tata Consulting Engineers, New Delhi. Mr. Srinivas, welcome to the Reducing Net Heat Rate conference. Sir, are you ready with your presentation?
Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, so actually the presentation, I could not make it complete, but I will try to share the first initial screen. Let me share the screen, entire application. I think. Oh, how to share the presentation?
We've got your screen, sir. You have to select the presentation. You have to select the particular tab on which you have your presentation and then start sharing your screen.
I'll just come to that.
Okay, done. Okay.
Akshay would request you to please help Mr. Srinivas with his presentation, please.
Sharing is done from which tab, actually?
Sir, on the bottom you will see it is a little button with an arrow.
Yeah, share your, something called share your screen.
Yes, sir, we did see your screen, only we didn't see your presentation. So on the bottom of this platform, AirNeat platform, you will see a camera, a microphone, and then you see a tab with a arrow on it. That is the share.
Yeah, that only I pressed. After that.
Basically, click there, and the moment you will see a pop-up window. Yeah, we can see your presentation. Now you have
just switch, sir.
From there.
Yeah, you are able to see the presentation.
So we can see your screen, but not your presentation. So
there, yeah. No, you have to go to share screen button. Please click on share screen button.
Share screen button. Yeah, iPad. Yeah, I said your entire screen. I had to share. I had to share now.
Have you opened the presentation yet?
The presentation had open, huh?
If you have opened, please share the screen and then I will guide you from there.
The presentation I am opening now.
Okay, please open the presentation, then only you will be able to share that.
Okay.
Also, to the participants who raised their hands, Mr. Devesh Dubey and Mr. Chandrasekhar Putra, please be a little patient. Once we are done with the presentations, we will bring you on stage and you can ask your questions to the presenters.
Yeah.
Once you will open the presentation, now you have to share the screen. Now click on the presentation on the bottom of your.
Yes, we see the presentation.
Yeah, you are able to see the presentation, okay?
Yes,
yeah.
Just make it full screen, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Now please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So first thank you all for be patient with me for some time, and thanks for the Mission Energy for inviting me. And I will have to render my apology for not being able to make the full presentation because of my ill health for last week. And I should also say why I was not keeping good health. I'll just a minute, because I installed a solar rooftop on my house around 5 kilowatts, and it was accumulating dust. And last week I tried to clean it, and I'm doing a lot of research on that, how to clean the solar panels and cleaning on the rooftop, because this is rooftop is going to be a major contribution to our grid later on as the time goes on. So I am doing that, and in the course I just had to take some dust into my nose, and that has created a problem. So I was not able to make the presentation to the full extent. So I'll continue with the permission with whatever is there, and yeah. Yeah, so let us continue with the presentation, and I thank you, Mr. Pawan Mathur, for your vivid presentation. I get a lot of information on the topics what you have selected, and was a good presentation. And let me continue with my presentation. The topic has been discussed at length in various forums, in various platforms, and this is something not new to all of us, but it has assumed more importance and complexity nowadays, because we are going to make a paradigm change in our energy scenario, in the sense that we are in the process of migrating to the from fossil fuel environment to the non-fossil fuel and renewable energy environment. This is a very vital migration we are doing, and in the process, if you see because all these coal-based power plants, all fossil fuel power plants are baseload power plants. That means they have the highest efficiency when they are on at full load, or the MCR, BMCR they call it. Okay. So in the sense now, as we daytime, and it has its own peak time. It is called inverted U shape, from morning 6:30 to evening 5-6 o'clock. And this is and this energy component, input of solar energy into the grid, is getting peaked by 12 o'clock, something like that. And we have to accommodate that. We have no other choice, and we have to have a migration to this renewable energy sources, and it's a must, and we cannot avoid it. So having said that, now coming to the point, when this is coming, is taking its own share in the energy contribution, the challenges in the solar side, in the coal-based plant, are getting more and more critical and more complicated as such, because the power plants have to be back down during this time when solar energy is picking up. And actually the peak load hours in a day in the grid are from morning 6 to morning 8 o'clock, 8 to 8:30, and again it starts from evening 6 to up to 9:30 or 10 o'clock. During this peak load peaks, actually the renewable energy is not available, because it's available only between off peak, between these two, morning peak and evening peak. That means the balance, it has to be balanced, or it has to be compensated by other fossil fuel power plants. So this is a scenario that means we have to manage the grid in a stable condition to meet all the demands of the morning peak, evening peak, and also there are some seasonal loads, like when there is agricultural demand of load, and because of seasonal variations. So to meet all these things, the running of the coal-based power plants has assumed a new dimension of criticality and complexity, in the sense that when the plants have to be back down, that means naturally the heat rate is going to be affected. So the very purpose of this topic is how to improve the heat rate. So we all have discussed at length in various platforms, and there are new technologies coming up to improve on different, in various ways how the heat rate can be improved. But this new scenario which has come now, has further complicated it. So how this is going, and this is a must. We cannot do away with this. And till 2050, we have to have these coal-based power plants gradually reducing their share in the energy portfolio. So and as we keep on reducing the fossil fuel power plants share in the market, imagine managing heat rate, it keeps on assuming more and more importance. So coming to the point that if you know the various other this migration is taking place with the renewable energy like solar, photovoltaic, and wind-based power, wind energy, and also there are other technologies coming up like biogas and municipal solid waste power plants, mini hydel plants contributing, but they are contributing very less. And we are also going into the picture scenario of energy storage systems. This research is going on energy storage systems. So this hello. Yeah, that time when the scenario of energy storage system comes into picture, the share of
yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, the share of the coal-based power plants will also have to be reduced, and we have to maybe run only the efficient power plants which can have a very good heat rate, and other plants maybe will have to be shut down or keep them as standby. So as you see, this scenario is going to take place another 10 years, maybe down the time. And we are also having other technologies coming up, like we also have nuclear power plants coming up, and they have their own way of calculating the heat rate, and other things like we have hydel power plants, but they are also having very less contribution, but they have gestation periods. So in a nutshell, what we are seeing is that to get the best heat rate, and adding to this, we are going to have, we are already facing a challenge of reducing the pollution, which is 70% by the coal-based power plants. To meet that and to meet our Paris Agreement, so we are necessarily bound to take up some of the corrective measures as suggested by CERC or the CPCB, that we have to implement the FGD technology, that is flue gas desulfation, for removing the sulfur content from the flue gas, and also the removing NOx content, that is through SCR, selective catalytic reactors. So these things are going to take, all put together, maybe 1% of the auxiliary consumption. They are going to increase the auxiliary consumption content by another 1%. So this is another challenge. So already the heat rate we are having a lot of problems with our coal, because coal is having high ash content in our Indian scenario, and we are having high ambient temperatures. Because of that, also the auxiliary consumption is going up. Adding to that, these new technologies which are necessity or are mandated to implement, they are going to increase the auxiliary consumption. That means the heat rate, we are going to be affected by this way. Adding to that, because of this peak solar energy component getting day by day more and more into the grid, so we have to reduce the capacity of the power plants to the extent that solar energy can be accommodated. So because of that also, we will face a lot of challenges. You know that even whenever we reduce or when you do the load excursions on the plants, the heat rate is not constant. It is going to change. It is going to vary. A machine reaches to a next lowest or stable operating conditions. So because of when you change the load from 100% to 80%, 80% to 60%, during these changes, heat rate is going to be affected. So in a nutshell, if you see overall, over a day, if you see the calculated heat rate, all these load excursions are going to have an impact on the heat rate. So this is one aspect. So we all know how the heat rate is calculated and what are the types of how to calculate heat rate and different methods used and what are the standards. You know that ASTM standards are there. That is PTC6 is the standard which is used to calculate the heat rate, which is used for using a performance guarantee also. Now let us see what are the options available. Any further options are available to bring down the heat rate. So as my presentation shows, we have some factors which are like O&M and engineering issues. That means how the plant has been designed in the initial phases, initial stage, and how the plant is being operated. So these are the two things which are purely internal and can be controlled and by various methods and internal research and teamwork and proper efficiency planning. All those things we can reduce the heat rate by using our internal measures. And also some of the changes, so implementing them also will have good effect to bring down the heat rate, but they are all cost incentive. Of course, it is going to have a trade-off between the cost incentive as well the overall and the payback period. All those things we can look into that. Based on that, which technology is to be implemented and when. So there are various other things which are already discussed, like the water chemistry, how it's going to impact, and other things like the soot blowing technology. And if you see, already we have done a lot of research, and now we are coming with the supercritical boilers. So now we are having almost all of new coal-based power plants are coming with either 500, 660, or 800 megawatts. So because of that, we are going to have a higher efficiency. If you see on this, how the efficiency between the old power plants and the latest, if you see, compare, in 210 megawatts, we had an efficiency of 37.8. That was the efficiency which could be achieved with 210 megawatts plants. But when come to the 800 megawatts, we are able to achieve 40.5% efficiency. So this is how we have been able to achieve a higher percentage of efficiency. That means a good heat rate. And other than that, we are using other technologies like soot blowing is the one. A lot of research is going on the soot blowing because it takes a lot of heat. A lot of steam conversion is there. So in that, there is a possibility and research is going on, and like using the steam instead of using the main steam. So there are methods, suggestions, and already NTPC has implemented in Rihand power plant. Instead of using main steam, they used CRH. Using CRH, the steam in the soot blowing applications, so they could achieve almost a very good improvement in the heat rate. It's substantial improvement. So, and the payback period also around 4 to 5 years. I think that is a good payback period. So that is one suggestion that this can be implemented. When we talk about the heat rate, in thermal power plants, I think it's a time we should also talk about the gas fuel fired power plants. That is combined cycle power plants also. So it is a heat rate in a combined cycle plant has more importance when compared to the efficiency, and it is affected by a lot of other reasons compared to coal-based power plants. Because in a combined cycle power plant, a lot of other factors which will affect is the ambient air temperature, frequency, and the other conditions are there, frequency, ambient conditions, and many other factors are there which will improve, which can affect the heat rate. Coming to the picture now. So in the present power plant, which is Yadadri, it is having 5 into 800 megawatts. So they are going to install 3 megawatts of rooftop solar. So this rooftop solar is going to reduce the auxiliary consumption to some extent. See, it is a 5 into 800 megawatts means around 4,000 megawatts. Which is around 10% of the auxiliary will be consumed, that is 400 megawatts. So 3 megawatt is very small, but it will going to definitely give some effect on the heat rate improvement, because they can use the auxiliaries like lighting loads and other small auxiliaries which otherwise are consumed through as an auxiliary consumption from the main plant. And coming to the other things, like when we have to calculate heat rate and the methods what we are using, the internal factors what I said is that, of course, we have to maintain the plant in a much more reliable manner, having all condition monitoring and other maintenance procedures, operating procedures. But the thing is, what going to add to these things is accuracy, precision, and these are the things which add up now, and we need to concentrate more on how accurately, with what precision, and what is a good engineering practice we have to follow in all these operation and maintenance procedures. Because reliability is the one which makes the actually I can say we can bring the heat rate in a desired form. So to make the plant and the auxiliaries more reliable, we need to have very good maintenance practices. Otherwise, because we will be losing the plants, we will be losing less loads, we have to black down the equipment, we have to run back the units, all those things, all load excursions are going to affect the heat rate. So we need to have very stringent, and it is like we should think that when you are running a coal-based power plant as if you are running a nuclear-based power plant. So that makes a better sense, because if you take that kind of a seriousness and concentration on to maintain the auxiliaries and the maintenance procedures and the operating procedures, so we can definitely achieve a good improvement in the heat rate. Apart from all other modifications, new technology, which have to bring back to the being. Some ephemeral. That means which you don't have control over that. That is the quality of coal. Absolutely, we have no control on the quality of coal, and we have to live with that. But monitoring the coal condition online. So if we can monitor the coal condition online, then based on that we can have some new softwares and programs which can be developed, so that how effectively you can do the soot blowing based on the coal condition. So these are the things which we can actually bring in, because latest technology is available and a lot of data analytic techniques are available nowadays. So we should use those data analytic tools, techniques, methods to bring in this together, is to reduce the effect of outside agencies, like outside factors which are not in our control. The second thing is the grid condition. So we should have a grid which is more and more stable. As we know, a lot of improvements have been done after the incident in 2012, when there was a blackout on northern grid. So a lot of grid code discipline has been developed, and we are following most of the grid codes, and that is but that still needs more and more what you can say improvements, enhancements, so that grid has to be stable at any point of time. Otherwise, any disturbance in the grid will necessarily cause some of the plants to run back, or may have to shut down again to restart. It takes time. So that will actually, we can say net heat rate, we can say annual heat rate, we can say when it's going to affect those on the cumulative basis, the heat rate. So making a good grid condition means we should have all the switchyard protections. The protection coordination has to be a rigid one. So we know that you all know protection coordination, what is meant by protection coordination, how your switchyard is linked with the outgoing transmission lines. So the transmission lines and the switchyard, these two will have a protection coordination, in which if the line is, if one evacuating line trips, what action we have to take in the plant. Similarly, when the unit trips in a power plant, what action to be taken in the transmission system, how to reduce the load on the transmission lines, all those things is called. These are the things which are to be coordinated in a proper way with the state load dispatch centers and the regional load dispatch centers. And of course, there is a monthly or I think quarterly meeting which takes place for the protection coordination. So they do discuss all the various trippings that have happened on the lines or on the plants. Because nowadays we are having all the 800 megawatt units, because any one unit trips is going to create a huge impact. So protection coordination, in the sense, one of the things which can talk about is special protection schemes. So these are the latest things which are getting implemented in the grid discipline, so that in the switchyard we have to have a special protection schemes, which means what affects inside the plant, so that the plant will not get disturbed. So it is basically to have a balanced system, so that when the line trips, transmission system or evacuation line trips, there should not be disturbance to the plant. In the sense, it should not be a greater disturbance. Of course, disturbance will be there, but how to manage the disturbance on the evacuation line side. Similarly, when there is a unit trips, suppose in the 4,000 megawatt, 5 into 4,500 megawatt, so there can be a situation where the entire plant can go blackout. When that happens, the 4,000 megawatts, suddenly it is taken out of the grid. So it creates a huge impact, and it may pull out the grid, state grid, or it may also impact the regional grid. So to avoid such eventualities, we should have a proper protection coordination system, so that whenever such incident happens, the line is not getting disturbed or the grid is not getting pulled out at any point of time. This is what I mean by a proper protection coordination system. So this is also very important, because ultimately why this topic is being discussed is because this will again impact the heat rate, because we have to have a lot of startup times. We have to have a load variations and load swings. Because of these sudden swings in the system, because the sudden load swings will impact, and sometimes the machine will be able to manage with the proper tuning is done in their control systems, like your AVR controls and your speed droop control characteristics. All those things are properly, if they're implemented, they will be able to take care. Otherwise, they'll be getting desynchronized, or they'll trip because of something like or something like that will happen, and it will have a disturbance in the unit. So to avoid such things, we should have it is in the scope of power grid. So they will maintain the grid with the available technology, and they are trying their best to maintain the grid to be more stable. But sometimes things will not be in our hand because of the bad weather conditions. So to look into that aspect also, we should be prepared for a stable grid disturbance, how it's going to impact the power plant, which in turn impacts the heat rate ultimately. So with these things, what I think I have made some inputs I could give from my experience. And the rest of the things, many other things have been discussed at length by many of the speakers. And also,
Right.
what I want to tell you is, one last point I want to add. So the research is going on in using hydrogen fuel, hydrogen as a fuel. Of course, in combined cycle technologies, Germany is doing research on combined cycle power plants to use, instead of gas, they want to use hydrogen fuel. So what I also feel is that there can be a auxiliary firing, because an augmented firing that can take place even in the coal-fired power plants, where instead of oil, we may be using a hydrogen fuel also. So this technology so far not has been discussed. I am not aware of somebody has seen this new developments, but there is a scope that we can use hydrogen fuel in the coal-fired power plants in the place of oil guns. So we can during startup we can use oil guns, and in a similar way we can have another hardware to be built up so that the hydrogen fuel also can be used as a fuel, and it will augment any load variations or any load recursions. So this is one new thing. This is going to take a lot of time, but there is a scope direction. So with that, I conclude, and thank you very much for your patient listening.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivas, for your presentation. Important points brought out by you. We have a few questions that have started coming in. We have a question coming in from Devesh Dubey. Mr. Dubey, I would request you to please unmute yourself and ask your question. He is Chief Chemist, Coal, CSP GCL, Korba. So please go ahead, ask your question, and please turn on your camera as well.
My question is from Mr. Mathur, RB Mathur.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Pawan Mathur, sorry.
Yes, Mr. Mathur.
Sir, you are telling about the fanless cooling system, and materials are used where no algae formation is there. Now my question is that is it possible without using any biocide we can avoid any algae formation?
Mr. Mathur, have you been able to hear the question?
No. Means the basic concept which I shared is
Mr. Mathur, can you please turn on your camera?
Yeah. Yes,
sir.
So what I shared is that the fanless cooling towers, first of all, this has major advantage in the form of not having the fan. So that is the major advantage I shared for improving the efficiency of your cooling tower. Then what we understand from these cooling towers, the construction material which is there in these cooling towers does not encourage the formation of the algae. So the materials which we use to clean all these algae is also reduced. So that also adds to the efficiency improvement. So that is what I want to convey.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. I would request all participants, please raise your hands and go ahead and ask questions. And if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A section. Okay, I am taking up a few more questions that we have got, and these are okay. Let me go ahead. A question coming in from Sameer Pandap, Head Performance and Efficiency, Marathon Power Limited. His question is: how do you monitor equipment APC deviation in ENMS system? Mr. Mathur, would you like to take that?
Yes. So APC we have moduled in such a manner that every day we are able to monitor it on the overall basis, that what is our APC for today, and we are doing it in all our plants. So we are able to understand what is our APC day basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. And as I told, we also have energy monitoring on individual equipment basis, or say for major fans, or say for other major consumers of the thermal power plants. So we are able to understand where our power is going. And then, as I said, we have comparisons also available with the other plants. So if I come to know that my consumption in fans is this in this plant, and my consumption in fans is this, for pumps my consumption is this in this plant, so they are inquiring with each other, what are you doing then to reduce this, or how your consumption is lesser for auxiliary power. And doing this comparison, we are able to understand and know what are the technologies or what are the methods they are using. So this is then replicated to other plants also. So this is the way we are monitoring and controlling the APC.
Right. Mr. Srinivas, would you like to add something on this question?
No, I have nothing to add.
All right. Let's then take up another question. And Mr. Mathur, this question I think is again for you. So Mr. M.N. Mohan is asking, Mr. Mathur, use of compressor, exhaust, and AC system for heating water, or any with solar support in any of your plants. He's asking if any of these exist. Use of compressor, exhaust, or AC system for heating water, or any other solar power support that you have.
No, actually, we are evaluating all those technologies, but still we have not found the ROI very attractive. So we are trying to understand the concentrated solar systems, but the space requirement or storage requirements are not, we are not finding them lucrative at this stage. So we are not getting the proper proposals on that. Technical proposals, yeah. So that is not getting possible to increase the water temperature for improvement in the boiler feed water. And second thing, you asked about the compressor heat. So it is most of the time viable only when the compressor is means very near to the lines which are going to the boiler. So that is again we are finding probable to practically implement it, although we are trying to evaluate them, but we are not we have still not finalized on them.
All right.
Yeah.
We have I think there was another question. Mr. Srinivas, perhaps you can take this question. It's coming from Mr. Sameer Pandab. He's saying, sir, may please guide for the generator efficiency deviation monitoring system and its effectiveness.
Yeah, what is the point you wanted to?
So, Mr. Pandab wants your guidance for generator efficiency deviation monitoring system and its effectiveness.
See, we have got the generator monitoring, condition monitoring equipment, efficiency monitoring. We have online tools which are implemented in the generator. Like, see, in the generator performance is majorly affected by a few parameters, like your maintaining the hydrogen. See, we have to maintain the generator in a proper conditions, like maintain the temperature. Okay, so that is maintaining hydrogen pressure. So proper hydrogen pressure, pressure, and cooling water temperature. Those are the things which will make the hydrogen cooled generators be more effective. So monitoring hydrogen parameters, maintaining hydrogen pressure, and amount of hydrogen replacement and hydrogen purity. So these are the things which one way it can affect. The other things which matters is the hydrogen efficiency, in the sense, see, by maintaining the hydrogen generator parameters, like so we have to have a proper AVR, and you should also have your power system stabilizer. We have got something called power system stabilizer. So this power system stabilizer has to be put on all the time. So that will take care of all the deviations on the grid. So these are few things at this moment I can suggest.
All right. Let me see if we have any more questions that have come in. It's a request to the attendees. If you do have a question, please raise your hand. Our speakers are here. They've given you the presentations and they have shared their experience with you. If there are any questions that are there in your mind, please go raise your hands and the speakers will be happy to answer your questions. So let me check if there are more questions which have come in. Okay. So, okay, I'm not sure who the question is to, but there is another question which has come from Mr. Ashutosh Peshkar. He's asking, what should be the general WBT range in which this gravity cooling towers works more effectively? So this question is for Mr. Mathur. So can you take this up?
No, I'm not able to understand.
The question is, what should be the general WBT range in which the gravity cooling towers work more effectively? So this is what I'm saying to the participants. Please raise your hands and directly ask your questions to the speakers. You know, they will understand your questions better instead of activating. Just raise your hands and you'll be on the stage and you can ask the questions to the speakers. Did you get this question, Mr. Bhatt?
I have not got it properly, but still I can answer this. Because, in general, in our last evolutions, we have found that around 500 meter cube per hour, those are the kind of ranges which are normally available, which are applicable to the most of our power plants in the range of 2 into 23 or in that range. So we have requirement into that ranges. And we have also understood from the suppliers that in this range, the efficiency of the cooling towers is good. And when we go beyond these ranges, then they have problem in supplying into these cooling towers.
Right. And now we have a question from Mr. V.K. Kentwar. Mr. Kentwar, can you please unmute yourself and start your camera and go ahead and ask your question to our speakers. Mr. Kentwar,
yes.
Please start your camera.
Actually, my question is Mr. Mathur. I wanted to know how the closed loop system will have auto close system have much more effect on the improvement of efficiency, because we know that manually precise control is not become possible, and we know that minor adjustment in the input parameters will affect adversely the performance efficiency, and that for that I think C&I system is playing very important role.
Yes.
So what I wanted to know, your expert comment about the importance of CI system for making the performance up to optimal level and reducing the net heat rate on account of this EPC.
Yes. So are you? I think you are talking about the advanced process control systems.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So as I said earlier also, that in place of having the manual systems, no operator can control all the systems manually. Means individual loops you cannot control, or individual when the systems runs independently. Suppose SFN is running in a independent as an independent system, IDFAN is running as an independent system, then coal is controlled separately. So they are operating in their best way, but as a combined system, this is not operating in the best way. So then there is options available to operator for taking the decisions based on his skills. But when you operate through APC systems, all the systems operate in a synchronized way. So they look into each other, that what is my SFO, SF flow, ID flow, PA flow, oxygen, and everything. So they work in a multivariable environment then. and they take the optimum decision for improving the efficiency of the system. So that is one thing. Second thing, which I had not included into my presentation. Now we have digitalized the system also, which are artificial intelligence based. So they are one step ahead. Although the controlling systems are not available at this moment, but advisory systems are available at this moment. So they are intelligent enough to understand even what are the variations in the coal quality and how it is affecting the system. What are the different parameters which are affecting. So they are able to understand the proportions, they are able to understand the chemistry, they are able to understand the hazardous conditions, they are able to understand the means various environmental threats. So combining all this, they can give early predictions to operators, and this also helps.
Right, Mr. Mathur, we have another question for you. Sorry, this question actually is from Mr. Srinivas. So Mr. Srinivas, I'll request you to please unmute yourself. And the question for you is, for what auxiliaries rooftop solar panels are used in plant, as most auxiliaries are critical type. So whether solar power is effective for sustaining these auxiliaries, or are they used only for the HVAC type loads?
See, there are a number of auxiliary balance of plant systems. So which, for example, your water system is there, potable water system, and we have lighting loads, and we have other auxiliaries which are non-critical. Okay, we have got window or package AC systems. So those are the things which are like you're in office. The office is not a critical area, so where we can have those auxiliary systems. But these auxiliaries are fed from the station transformer only. So that way, these rooftop solar panels, once we are installed, so they are going to take some part of the auxiliary load.
All right. I would again request the participants to please put your questions in the questions section or raise your hand. Mr. Mathur, there's a question which Mr. Chandrasekhar Ucha is asking. How the load increases in ACC by using single row tube bundle in place of multi-row bundles? Please, can you elaborate on the same? Mr. Mathur, please unmute yourself. Yes.
As I told earlier also, the condenser tube bundles is majorly a function of heat conduction. So what is the conductivity, what is the coefficient of thermal conduction, that is important. So in case of multi-row and in case of single row, there is a difference into this parameter, and that is how the heat conduction is better in the case of single row tube, and that is how it helps into maintaining the vacuum.
All right. So we've taken a fair number of questions. Okay, one more is coming in for you, Mr. Mathur, from Mr. M.N. Mohan. He's asking, any waste alternative fuel like RDF, plastic waste, etc., that are tried as co-firing in the CFBC boiler to reduce unit cost? If so, any hit on availability?
No, I mean, we are using some of the waste materials into thermal power plants, but mostly are within the range of less than 5%, and depends on the availability, and depends on the calorific value. So within the 5% range, we have used in some of our plants at Balaji, and there are 2-3 plants we are using, and availability is the main concern, and then the operation will be the another concern. So that is there. Within 5%, we have used rice husk and all those things which are available very near to our plants.
All right. I would like to thank our presenters, Mr. Pavan Mathur and Mr. Niti Srinivas, for taking the time out and patiently answering so many questions along with your presentations. One of our speakers, Mr. Mukul Srivastava, is having a time constraint. He will join us briefly after some time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a lunch break, and we, instead of coming back at 2:30, we'll try and come back around 2 o'clock and hear Mr. Srivastava, as well as the other speakers, who are going to talk about analyzing process-based data and statistical assessment of heat rates. So thank you to Mr. Mathur and Mr. Srinivas for joining us today. We'll take a break and we'll come back at 2 p.m. to join us again.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving this opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.